I was standing in my parents' kitchen on Thanksgiving when my Uncle Gareth leaned across the island counter, wine glass dangling between his fingers, and said to me, "You know that dead end job will absolutely ruin you, right? I mean, you went to college for this?" He laughed. This wheezing, condescending laugh that bounced off every surface like a rubber ball, making sure everyone heard it. My mom kept stirring the gravy like she hadn't heard a thing. My dad suddenly found something fascinating in the bottom of his beer bottle. And I just stood there, holding a bowl of mashed potatoes, feeling like I was naked in front of my entire family. You know that feeling when your entire body flushes hot and then ice cold in the span of 3 seconds? When your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth and your brain just goes blank, except for a single thought: I want to disappear. 22 years old with a business degree, and you're working in some grimy little shop making $15 an hour, cutting metal for strangers? He took a long sip of his wine, eyes locked on mine over the rim. You'll wake up at 40 still covered in metal shavings with nothing to show for it. I can still see his face so clearly, that little smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, the absolute certainty in his eyes that he knew everything about life, success, me, God. I should have said something epic back. Something that would have made everyone go, oof, like in those movies. But instead, I mumbled something about learning the industry from the ground up and escaped to the bathroom where I locked the door and cried silently while sitting on the edge of the bathtub. I'm Renata, by the way, now 37, but back then, just a naive 22-year-old who thought I could forge my own path. And before I go deeper into this story, which, believe me, gets so much better, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Because honestly, I still sometimes can't believe how this all played out, and I need witnesses to remind me it really happened. So let me back up a little. My Uncle Gareth wasn't just any relative with an opinion. He was the success story in our family. The golden child who built Precision Edge Industries from nothing into a 2 million company that manufactured specialized cutting tools for industrial applications. At every family gathering, the conversation eventually turned to Gareth's latest business win, his new vacation home, the charity auction where he donated $50,000. Meanwhile, I had just graduated with my business degree and gotten a job at Metal Craft Solutions, this small fabrication shop that, yes, made custom metal parts, including some that occasionally got sold to companies like my uncle's. It was dirty work. I came home with metal dust in my hair, cuts on my hands, and grease under my fingernails that no amount of scrubbing could remove. But here's what my uncle couldn't see. I was obsessed with how things were made, completely fascinated by the transformation of raw materials into precision tools. I would stay late watching the master craftsmen work, asking questions, taking notes. The older guys started letting me try things, showing me the subtle techniques that weren't in any manual. You got an eye for it. Vern, this 60-something metal worker with forearms like Popeye, told me one day, "Most college kids want to sit in an office. You want to understand what makes a thing valuable." My uncle only saw the surface, my dirty clothes, my modest salary, my position on the corporate ladder, which was basically the bottom rung. He didn't see what I was learning, because people like him never look beyond appearances. That Thanksgiving wasn't the first time he'd made comments, but it was the most public, the most humiliating. I remember calling my best friend Imani that night, sobbing into the phone. "Maybe he's right," I told her. "Maybe I'm wasting my life. Everyone in my family thinks I'm throwing away my education." "Well, what do you think?" she asked. And that question stopped me cold, because despite the humiliation, despite the doubt, despite everything, I loved what I was doing. I just hated being looked down on for it. "I think I'm learning something valuable," I finally said. "But I also think I want to prove him wrong so badly I can taste it." "Then that's what you'll do," Imani said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. After that Thanksgiving, I started working with a new kind of intensity. I wasn't just learning anymore. I was studying the business from every angle. I volunteered for extra shifts in different departments. I asked the office manager to teach me about pricing and margins. I started noticing inefficiencies, materials that were being wasted, techniques that could be improved. 6 months in, I approached Owen, the owner of Metalcraft, with some suggestions. He was this gruff, practical man who'd inherited the business from his father and seemed perpetually worried about keeping it afloat. The way we're doing the spiral cuts is taking too long. I told him, if we adjusted the process like this, I showed him my sketches, we could cut production time by almost 30%. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "Show me." My idea worked, and that opened a door. Suddenly, Owen was asking for my input on other processes. 3 months later, he promoted me to floor supervisor. 6 months after that, he asked if I'd be interested in overseeing a new specialized division focusing on precision medical instrument components, a market my uncle's company had tried and failed to break into. That division took off. Turned out hospitals and medical device companies were desperate for custom parts made with the kind of attention to detail I insisted on. We grew from 3 employees to 15 in that division alone. Meanwhile, I was learning about my uncle's business too. Not directly, he would never have shared information with me, but through industry contacts, suppliers we both used, even former employees of his, who occasionally came to work for us. I started to see the weaknesses in his operation, the corners he cut, the innovations he dismissed, the way he treated vendors and employees like they were beneath him. Your uncle's company is still living in the last decade. One of our suppliers told me over lunch one day, they're coasting on old relationships, but they're not keeping up with the new manufacturing tech. I filed that information away, not with any specific plan in mind, just as part of my growing understanding of the industry landscape. 4 years into my time at Metalcraft, Owen called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable, shifting papers around on his desk before finally meeting my eyes. "I've got a health situation," he said bluntly. "Cancer, pancreatic. It's not good." My heart dropped. Owen wasn't just my boss, he'd become a mentor, even something of a father figure. "I'm selling the business," he continued. "Got an offer from Valley Industrial Group. They're mainly interested in the client list and equipment. They'll probably shut down operations here, absorb what they want. But what about the employees? What about what we've built?" I asked, thinking of the 15 people in my division alone, of Vern, who had trained me, of the specialized skills that would be scattered to the wind. Owen shrugged, a gesture containing all his regret and helplessness. "I've got medical bills coming and a daughter's college to think about. They're offering fair market value." I went home that night and barely slept. By morning, I had what Imani later called my beautiful, insane idea. I asked Owen to give me 30 days before accepting Valley's offer. Then I called my parents and took out a second mortgage on my condo. I approached 3 of our biggest medical clients and secured letters of intent for future contracts. I created a detailed business plan showcasing growth projections. And then, I walked into First State Bank and applied for a business loan to buy Metalcraft Solutions. The loan officer, this guy named Reed with a perfectly knotted tie and skeptical eyes, looked at me like I was speaking Martian. "You want to buy the company where you work?" At 26? "I've been running their most profitable division for 2 years, I told him. "I know every aspect of the operation, every client, every process." "It's a significant loan," he hedged. "It's a significant opportunity," I countered. I'd like to say he was immediately convinced by my brilliance, but the truth is, he turned me down. So did the next bank. And the next. It was the fourth bank, a smaller community institution, where the loan officer was a woman named Sophia Reyes, who finally gave me a real hearing. "Your numbers are solid," she said, flipping through my business plan. "But manufacturing is volatile, especially in economic downturns, which is why diversification is key," I said, showing her my strategy for expanding our medical instrument division while maintaining the industrial client base. "These medical components have recession-resistant demand." She studied me for a long moment. "You know, when I started in banking 15 years ago, men like your uncle were the only ones who got these kinds of loans. Now I'm sitting across from you." She closed the folder. Let's make this happen. The loan didn't cover the full asking price, so I had to get creative. I approached Owen with a hybrid offer, a down payment plus profit, sharing for 5 years. He'd get less cash up front, but potentially more long-term if I succeeded. Plus, his legacy would continue. You really want this, don't you? He asked. More than anything, I told him. He accepted my offer over Valley's higher bid. And just like that, at 26 years old, I became the owner of Metalcraft Solutions. The next 2 years were the hardest of my life. I worked 16-hour days. I juggled cash flow crises. I learned to negotiate with suppliers who didn't take me seriously until I showed them I knew more about their products than they did. I lost weight. I barely saw friends. I forgot what a vacation felt like. But we grew, slowly at first, then faster. I rebranded us as Precision Medical Manufacturing to highlight our specialized focus, though we kept our industrial clients too. I invested in new equipment that allowed us to make components no one else in our region could produce. I hired 3 engineers who brought fresh ideas and capabilities. By year 3, we had doubled our revenue. By year 5, we had outgrown our original facility and moved to a larger space. I was 31 years old and running a thriving manufacturing business with 42 employees. And my uncle? I saw him at family gatherings, of course. He'd ask vague questions about my little shop, clearly uninterested in the details. I never bothered correcting his assumption that I was still just a worker rather than the owner. Let him think what he wanted. What he didn't know was that his company, Precision Edge, was struggling. Their old-school approach was losing ground to more innovative competitors, including, yes, my company, though we weren't direct rivals in most areas. Their refusal to update technology was making them inefficient. Their dismissive treatment of employees had created a revolving door of talent. I heard rumors through industry channels. Precision Edge had lost a major contract. They were having quality control issues. They'd laid off a dozen workers. And then came the moment that changed everything. I was at an industry conference in Chicago when I bumped into Naveen Chaudhry, who served on the board of Midstate Bancorp, the bank that held my uncle's business loans. Your uncle's company is over-leveraged, he told me over drinks at the hotel bar. Between the equipment they financed last year and the line of credit they maxed out, they're in a precarious position. If they lose one more major client, the bank might have to call the loan. That would bankrupt them, I said, feeling a strange mix of shock and something else I couldn't name. Naveen nodded. The bank doesn't want that. We'd rather find who could stabilize the operation. But time is getting short. I stayed up all night in my hotel room, running numbers, researching, thinking. By morning, I had made my decision. I called Sophia, who had become something of a mentor to me over the years. I want to make an offer for Precision Edge Industries, I told her, and I need to know if you'll back me. There was a pause. Isn't that your uncle's company? Yes, I said. It is. Getting a business loan to buy out your estranged uncle's failing company is not exactly a straightforward process, in case you were wondering. There were moments in those next few months when I thought I was absolutely losing my mind. What was I doing? Was this business strategy or just elaborate revenge? Sophia arranged a meeting with the bank's senior loan committee. I spent 3 weeks preparing, gathering every piece of financial data I could find on Precision Edge, analyzing their client base, their equipment assets, their operational weaknesses. I created a detailed plan for how I would integrate their remaining valuable components into my existing business while cutting their bloated overhead and outdated processes. The night before the presentation, I called Imani in a panic. This is crazy, right? I'm about to take on millions in additional debt to buy a struggling company from an uncle who humiliated me, just so I can walk into his office and say surprise. I was pacing my living room, half laughing, half hyperventilating. Is that really why you're doing it? Imani asked. I stopped pacing. No, I admitted after a long pause. The acquisition makes business sense. Their client list includes 3 major contracts that would take me years to land on my own. Their equipment, while aging, includes specialized machines that would cost twice as much new. Their facility is in a better location than mine, and their brand still has value in certain markets. So the fact that it's your uncle's company is? A very satisfying coincidence, I said. And we both laughed, though mine had an edge to it that probably should have worried me. The loan committee approved my proposal, though with stringent conditions. The bank would finance 60% of the purchase price. I would need to find the rest. I remortgaged my house. I sold my car and started driving a 10-year-old sedan. I approached 3 of my most loyal employees with an equity offer. They'd invest cash now for a small ownership stake. I even called Owen, now in remission, who agreed to convert some of my remaining profit share payments to him into an investment in this new venture. By the time I had the financing lined up, Precision Edge's situation had deteriorated further. They'd lost another major client and were struggling to make payroll. The bank was putting pressure on my uncle to sell. Here's where I made a decision that still makes me question my own character sometimes. I deliberately stayed anonymous as the buyer. I created a holding company, Nexus Acquisition Group, to make the offer. All negotiations went through my attorneys. I absolutely knew, that if my uncle realized I was the buyer, his pride would never let him sell to me, even if it meant losing everything. Was that manipulative? Yes. Was it necessary? Also, yes. Was it a little bit because I wanted to see the look on his face when he finally realized who had purchased his company? I'll let you decide. The negotiations were brutal. My uncle fought for every dollar, every term, every condition. But his position was weak, and he knew it. After 6 weeks of back and forth, we reached an agreement. 1.85 million for all assets, intellectual property, client contracts, and the facility. The deal would close in 30 days, with a 2-week transition period where he would stay on to help with the handover to new management. I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning in my attorney's office. By Wednesday, the bank had transferred the funds. On Thursday, I walked into Precision Edge Industries as its new owner. I still remember how my heart hammered in my chest as I pulled into the parking lot. I'd chosen my outfit carefully: a charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, subtle jewelry. Professional, but not flashy. The kind of outfit that says, I belong in the corner office without trying too hard. I paused in my car, taking deep breaths. What was I expecting here? Some movie-worthy confrontation where I deliver a devastating monologue and my uncle would crumble in defeat. Real life is rarely so tidy. Still, I'd be lying if I said I hadn't rehearsed what I might say in this moment. The receptionist didn't recognize me. Why would she? She smiled politely and asked if I had an appointment. I'm here to meet with Gareth Weston, I said. I'm the new owner. Her eyes widened slightly. Oh, from Nexus Acquisition? Of course. Mr. Weston is expecting you. His office is down the hall, last door on the right. I knew where his office was. I'd been there once as a child, looking up in awe at my successful uncle in his big leather chair. I'd thought he was a giant then. I wondered how small his office would seem to me now. The hallway felt a mile long. My heels clicked against the floor, too loud, too announcing. I could turn around. I could send my CFO to handle this transition. I could avoid this confrontation entirely. But then, I was at his door. It was open. He was sitting at his desk, reviewing some documents, a deep frown creasing his forehead. He looked older than I remembered from our last family gathering. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. I knocked lightly on the doorframe. He looked up, his expression shifting from stress to professional politeness. Come in, he said, standing and extending his hand. You must be from Nexus. I've been expecting you. I stepped into the office and took his hand. His grip was firm, the handshake of a man trying to assert dominance, even in defeat. Hello, Uncle Gareth, I said quietly. The change in his face was something I'll never forget. First confusion, his eyebrows drawing together, head tilting slightly, then disbelief, his eyes widening, mouth opening slightly. And finally, understanding. A flush spreading from his neck to his hairline, his hand going slack in mine. Renata, he said, as if he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. What are you doing here? Are you working for Nexus now? I released his hand and placed my portfolio on his desk. I am Nexus, I said. Nexus Acquisition Group is my holding company. I'm the one who bought Precision Edge. He stared at me for a long moment, then laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. That's not possible. You work in a fabrication shop. You're a metal cutter. I was, I said. Then I was a floor supervisor, then division manager. Then I bought the company. Now I own 2 manufacturing businesses, including yours. He sank back into his chair, the reality of the situation finally hitting him. This is a joke, he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. It's not, I replied, taking a seat across from him. I've been building my company for the past 9 years. We specialize in precision medical components now, though we still do industrial work. We've been growing steadily while Precision Edge has been struggling. So this is what? Revenge? He asked, anger now replacing shock. For what? Some comment I made at a family dinner years ago? I considered his question carefully. Was it revenge? Part of me had certainly fantasized about this moment, about watching him realize that the dead-end job he'd mocked had led me to take over his company. But the truth was more complicated. This is business, I finally said. Precision Edge is a strategic acquisition for my company. You have clients I want, equipment I can use, a facility that suits my expansion needs. But you kept your identity hidden, he said, accusation heavy in his voice. You deliberately misled me during negotiations. Yes, I admitted, because I knew you'd never sell to me if you knew. Your pride wouldn't allow it. And then the bank would have foreclosed. The company would have been liquidated, and 43 people would have lost their jobs immediately instead of having a chance to continue under new ownership. He stared at me, searching for a counter-argument, and finding none. So what happens now? He asked finally, defeated. You fire me, humiliate me. Tell the whole family how you conquered the mighty Gareth. I leaned forward, folding my hands on his desk. Now we have a decision to make. The purchase agreement includes a 2-week transition, with you staying on. We can do that professionally, focusing on what's best for the company and its employees. Or I can have security escort you out today. Your choice. The silence between us stretched long and tense. I could see him wrestling with his anger, his humiliation, his pride. 2 weeks, he finally said. I owe it to my employees to ensure a smooth transition. I nodded. I'll need full access to all financial records, client contracts, employee files, and operational documentation. I'll be bringing in my own team to assess every aspect of the business. You'll be expected to cooperate fully. Of course, he said stiffly. As I stood to leave, he called my name. I turned back. That day, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. At Thanksgiving, I was trying to push you toward something better. I thought you were wasting your potential. Was that an apology? An explanation? A justification? I couldn't tell. I know what I'm worth now, I told him. That's all that matters. Those 2 weeks were surreal. My uncle and I maintained a careful professional distance, communicating mainly through emails and in meetings. The employees were nervous. Of course, acquisitions usually mean layoffs. But as I got to know the team, I found many talented people who had simply been operating under outdated systems and poor management. There was Leon in engineering, whose innovative designs had been repeatedly shelved because my uncle thought they were too experimental. There was Daya in sales, who had built deep relationships with clients despite having to apologize constantly for quality issues created by cost-cutting measures. There was Javier in production, who had implemented unofficial process improvements on his line that the other shifts weren't allowed to use because my uncle insisted on doing things the way we've always done them. By the end of the first week, I had identified the core team I wanted to keep. By the end of the second, I had a clear plan for integrating Precision Edge's operations with my existing company while preserving what worked and fixing what didn't. On my uncle's last day, he cleared out his office in silence. I had expected some final confrontation, some last bitter words, but instead, he just seemed tired. As he was carrying the last box to his car, I met him in the parking lot. "What will you do now?" I asked. He set the box in his trunk and closed it before answering. "Alana wants to move to Arizona. Maybe it's time." Alana was his second wife, 15 years his junior. I'd met her twice at family events. I nodded. "The severance package is generous. It should help with the transition." "Did you know," he said suddenly, "that I started with nothing? My father, your grandfather, told me I'd never amount to anything, that I was a dreamer with no practical skills. I hadn't known that. In all the family mythology about Uncle Gareth, the success story, that detail had never been mentioned. I built Precision Edge to prove him wrong," he continued, "and for 27 years I did. I was somebody. I mattered. I didn't know what to say." This vulnerability from him was so unexpected that it knocked all my practiced responses out of my head. "You're still somebody," I finally said. "This is just a chapter ending, not the whole story." He looked at me then. Really looked at me. Maybe for the first time. "You were right to hide your identity during the acquisition," he said. "I never would have sold to you if I'd known. And that would have been a mistake. You'll do better with this company than I did these last few years." It wasn't an apology for how he'd treated me. It wasn't a recognition of my journey or my accomplishments. But it was an acknowledgement, and somehow that was enough. "Thank you," I said. He nodded once, got into his car, and drove away. I haven't seen him since, though I hear from my mother that he and Alana did move to Arizona, where he started a small consulting business for manufacturing startups. The integration of Precision Edge into my company wasn't smooth. There were culture clashes, redundancies, resistance to change. I had to let some people go. I had to fight to win the trust of others. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I'd taken on more than I could handle, if my desire to prove something had clouded my business judgment. But 15 months later, the combined company was more profitable than either had been separately. We had successfully retained 85% of Precision Edge's clients while expanding our medical components division into new markets. The rebranding to Nexus Precision Manufacturing was complete, erasing the last visible traces of my uncle's legacy. I wish I could tell you that this success filled the hole that his dismissal had created in me all those years ago. That proving him wrong finally silenced that voice in my head that sometimes whispers, "I'm not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough." But the truth is messier than that. Success doesn't heal old wounds. It just gives you nicer clothes to cover them with. What healed me, strangely enough, was that moment in the parking lot, seeing my uncle as a whole person, with his own wounds, his own demons, his own need to prove himself, recognizing that his dismissal of me had never really been about me at all. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret buying his company. It was the right business decision, and yes, there was something deeply satisfying about walking into that office as the new owner. But the revenge I'd imagined for so long didn't taste as sweet as I'd expected. Instead, it tasted like growing up. Today, Nexus Precision has 118 employees across 2 facilities. We're projecting $8.5 million in revenue this year. I'm looking at acquiring a third company next spring. And sometimes, when I'm walking the production floor, or reviewing design specs, or meeting with clients, I still get a little thrill knowing that this is mine. All mine. Built with my hands, my mind, my persistence. "That dead-end job," my uncle mocked, "it gave me everything I have. It taught me how things are made, how businesses operate from the ground up, how to see value where others see only costs. It connected me with mentors who believed in me before I fully believed in myself. So here's what I know now that I wish I could tell my 22-year-old self, crying in my parents' bathroom. There is no single path to success. No one else gets to define your worth. And the best revenge isn't taking someone else's power, it's recognizing your own. If you're watching this and feeling underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed, I see you. Keep going, keep building, keep learning. Your journey might not look like anyone else's, and that's exactly as it should be. And hey, if you found something valuable in my story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had someone dismiss your dreams only to be proven wrong later. I read every comment, and your stories help me remember that none of us are alone in these struggles. Until next time, this is Renata, reminding you that sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home.